Welcome back. Now, thousands of people who perish from chronic diseases in the country usually die a slow and painful death, and more often than not, without dignity. Many are usually discharged from hospitals and urged to go and rest at home and await the day and time they will breathe their last. For many patients, the news that medical practitioners can no longer help them fight the disease is usually like a hot nail in the flesh, and relatives too have been blamed for abandoning their loved ones who are suffering from chronic and lifelong diseases. In many of these cases, nurses are left to tend to these patients until they are no more. In the first part of a two-part documentary called The Last Hospital, Nimrod Tabu traversed several counties and highlighted the plight of patients ailing from chronic illnesses and witnessed the role of palliative care nurses whose main job is to manage the pain and psychological distress of these patients.
For several weeks now, I have been on a journey to meet Kenyans of different ages who are battling various forms of chronic and life-threatening illnesses. In this story, we'll hear tales of adversity and resilience and hope that refuses to give up.
Yeah.
These people have all given us their consent in writing to share their mixed experiences in their often lonely world of chronic and terminal illness. This is also an account of the selfless stories of individuals and institutions that are working every day to ease the pain of the sick and to give them dignity in the midst of great odds and a battle for survival. The Kenyatta National Hospital in Nairobi is a public tertiary referral hospital. KNH, as it is popularly known, serves close to 3,000 patients per day. At the oncology department, I meet Mark Okoth, a teacher by profession. Sitting quietly in a ward occupied by 7 other patients, Mark is eager to meet me and my crew. Until July 10th last year, his life was normal.
After 2 weeks, the pain again developed across the stomach, abdomen, that I could not walk straight. So I was straining. More so when I sit, if I try standing, there was a lot of pain. So I was straining, standing.
Several days later, the pain in his body became intense. Within weeks of enduring the first body ache, Mark lost the ability to use both his legs.
I went to another hospital, a big hospital, for more further tests. There they could not get anything, even plus the X-ray, they could not get anything. So when I came back, the pain reduces, but by the time that pain was reducing, I was now losing strength. But the strength, I did not lose it once. It was gradual.
Concerned, he sought medical advice, and after several tests, the worst news was delivered to him.
In Kenyatta is when they confirmed that I've got cancer, that is multiple myeloma. They told me that it is a cancer, a bone cancer, and it is not in one place.
I asked him if he has full knowledge of the disease and about his immediate concerns.
It shocked me because I could not imagine, because the kind of the food I'm taking, the environment, I felt that could not be the cause. So I was like, where could I get this cancer?
Doctors have been unable to find the primary cause of Mark's multiple myeloma, but their treatment includes radiotherapy, which he has had 10 sessions of. But the doctors are not yet happy with the results. He has not regained use of his legs.
I've been taken to radiotherapy. The first session was 10. Then the last one was 5, and they were successful. And the doctor told me that from there, there are chances that I can gain strength back.
For a man with a young family, Mark was full of life. He had great plans for his wife and 2 children. His youngest son was born the day he lost mobility.
I was curious because when my other friends of mine were telling me theirs is maybe stage, 2nd stage, 4th stage. So to me, I was like, what's about me? So I was trying to ask, but if I finally find that they could not tell me, I took it normal and I said, whatever the stage, I know it is treatable.
Mark, a committed Christian, now more than ever finds solace in reading the Bible.
Ecclesiastes 7, it do talk about that time to die is better than the time to be born.
A few floors away is Ward 3C, the children's ward. Here we meet 7-year-old Maxwell Mbugwa. His hospital bed is right at the entrance of this ward. He was admitted here in July last year. His father has kept by his side since then.
Nikaona kijana anaenda nafika mahali anaremewa. Juu nilienda nikaona ana ile appetite ya kukula, hataki kukula, anatapika. So mimi nikatafuta njia yenye naweza kumsaidia kama mzazi. So mimi nilitoka hapo nikamchukua nikaenda kwa hospitali iko katika upande wa Kiabu inaitwa Rusigeti Hospital. Sasa mali nilifika pale nikaelezea daktari akaniambia kulingana mtoto wanaweza mpea tu zile dawa za kutuliza tu uchungu.
For several weeks that eventually turned to months, Samuel treated his son with painkillers and antibiotics, as was advised by pharmacists.
After wiki tatu sasa ndivyo niliona mtoto, nilirudi tu pale hospitali nikaelezea hata nimeona shida nyingine imetokea, naona anafula huku na nikamwambia labda tuangalie kama ni tonsils. Unajua sasa nikiona shida kama ile nafikiria ni hizi tonsils hapa.
By June, Maxwell had become anemic. His first serious hospital checkup came in July when he was brought to Kenyatta National Hospital in the middle of the night during curfew hours.
Kaangalia wakaona mtoto venye yako damu yake iko chini sana na kenye wanafaa kumfanya labda aongezwe damu. Sasa wakanituma kwa daktari mwenye alikuwa hiyo usiku. Sasa nikaenda kwa yeye akaniambia ukijana venye nimemuona hawefai kurudi nyumbani.
Samuel recalls one morning when he and his wife were sitting by Maxwell's bedside. Doctors came accompanied by nurses who are practicing palliative care.
So alitolewa hiyo damu na ikaenda ikapimwa. Wakati ilipimwa, lakini ya kwanza ilitolewa haikutoka, ya pili mwingine akuja kajaribu katoka kadamu kadogo sana, lakini venye ilitoka iliweza kuonyesha ugonjwa wa mtoto. Sasa ndivyo walikabia sana wauliza wenye walikuwa wakaniambia sasa hebu tugojee daktari mkubwa na ili akuja kueleza hii shida nini. Lakini wakienda raundi juu lazima wageenda kila siku wanapita pale wakiona wagonjwa, daktari mkubwa na daktari wao wengine. Kuna mmoja tu nilisikia akipitisha akasema hii mna shida mkifanya mnafaa kuwa mnaanzia matibabu maana naona hii kama ni leukemia. Unajua mimi hiyo wakati siko nimeshikanisha leukemia ni nini. So mke wangu akanipiga simu akaniuliza mtoto anaendeleaje umeambiwa kwa aje. Mimi nikamwambia kitu nimesikia wakisema leukemia lakini mimi sijui leukemia ni nini nitagoja niabi. Akapiga dua akaniambia usiseme hiyo.
Since then, Maxwell has been under 24-hour surveillance from palliative care nurses. These nurses have specialized in ensuring a patient's days are added life into them, as opposed to adding days into a sick patient's life. It requires passion, perseverance and dedication. But in a country where health services usually grind to a halt because of various factors, palliative care is still fairly misunderstood.
Okay, bad news is bad. Let's just start there. It can never be good because if you're coming to tell me I'm sick and I'm never going to recover from whatever I'm suffering from, there's no way. Yes, there's no way to make it better, easier. But what we try to do first is to be as honest as possible, because patients come to us because we are the experts. They know we have the answers.
Most people think palliative care is for those who are dying. That's not true. Those who are dying are part of what we do. But from the time we make a diagnosis of a life-threatening illness or a life-limiting illness or a serious illness, you need to be supported by the palliative care teams. Alongside your primary doctors, whatever treatment they're giving you, they need to bring in the palliative care team to support you with your symptoms.
In Maxwell's case, nurses do the tough job. They have to explain why treatment is not working and why his body will experience pain instead of calmness. For relatives with young children such as Maxwell, psychosocial support is vital.
What we do in palliative care is to give realistic hope. So realistic hope means we examine the issues that the patient is going through. So if it's an illness and we've gotten to a point where we cannot cure it, rather than saying there's nothing more we can do for you, the language we use is to tell the patient we are not able to cure this disease. So if we are not able to cure the disease, what other options of treatment are there?
In the world of medicinal care, palliative services ought to have been rendered to patients with severe or chronic diseases once diagnosis is done. But in many, if not all cases, patients get palliative care at the very critical stage of the disease.
Most patients have a hard time coping with the illness because of the changes that come around with the illness. So denial is not a bad thing per se. I know most of us, we say patients are in denial, it looks like it's a bad thing. But denial is a coping mechanism. It's a way people cope with bad news. So the two types of denial is adaptive and maladaptive. So adaptive means I have cancer, but I don't want to talk about it. I will come for my clinic, I will do my treatment, but I don't want to keep on hearing people saying I have cancer. So I choose to ignore the cancer and I live my life. Now, maladaptive denial, you tell me I have cancer and I decide, well, I don't have cancer. You must be mistaken. I'm going for prayers, I'm going to take herbs. That is not possible.
In another ward, with patients suffering from skin infections and diseases, I meet Maria Manjiku. After working in Qatar as a house help since the year 2017, Maria's contract ended in August last year. She traveled back home and only weeks later developed skin blisters all over her body. After being admitted at the hospital, she found it difficult to take care of herself, meaning a nurse had to help her bath, clean her blisters and dress her.
But nilipofuata matibabu nikapata kujua sikurogwa bali ni ugonjwa kama ile ingine.
Her biggest concern now is stigma. Her family did not come to visit her for more than a month for fear of getting infected. The scars on her body are visible and doctors say they are likely to last a very long time, while warning that the blisters could possibly return. She may find it hard to get a job as a house help again.
Ugonjwa kama huu usijidharau. You accept yourself. Ujipende kwanza before hao wengine wakuaccept. Ukijipenda hautakuwa na stress. Hata kama inakuwa na stress unaweza patwa na stress juu venye watu wanakubeba wazazi, hawajui ugonjwa ni gani. Lakini kwanza ujikubali wewe mwenyewe.
But the true definition of pain, despair and confusion is found just a few meters away from Maria's hospital bed. Jacqueline Manjiku and her 4-year-old son Marcus are frequent guests at the hospital. Since his birth 4 years ago, Marcus has spent his whole life shuttling between the hospital and their home. Marcus is suffering from one of the most terrifying autoimmune diseases the world has ever known. Immediately after his birth in April 2016 at the Coast General Hospital, Manjiku knew there was something wrong with his son.
Na nikimza mkono yake right imebambuka hapa hivi na mdomo wake ilikuwa inatoka damu. After siku mbili blisters zikajaa mwili. Zikaanza kutoboka since then amekuwa hivyo.
When doctors could not identify what Marcus was suffering from, Manjiku moved to the Kenyatta National Hospital. She recalls doctors using very long technical words to describe her son's condition. Marcus has epidermolysis bullosa dystrophica, a disease that attacks the skin.
Waliniambia kusinimza nayo ati ni kama venye mtu albino anazaliwa na albino haezi change, so hii ni jinsi yake kwa hivyo.
The disease presents itself in the form of blisters, which with time ripen and burst, discharging pus and blood. They are very painful, we are told.
Uchungu anao kuzikena kumuosha, hata kumuino wezi muino, kimuino natoka na nyama yake. Kuzata akiwa mdogo ile kushika mtoto kinyonyesha, sasa tukishika na yeye bado alikuwa anatokanga hizo blister. Kumshika ni ngumu, kutembea, haizi tembea, kuvaa nguo, haizi vaa.
In order to provide him comfort every day, the doctor advised that he sleeps under this metal frame and beddings pulled on top of it. If you're wondering why, then here's the answer. Marcus cannot wear clothes at all. In fact, since he was born, he has been sleeping naked on top of bed sheets alone. His skin is so delicate that medics in foreign countries refer to the disease as the butterfly effect. Dr. Hannah Wanyika, who has been attending to Marcus, says it is difficult to treat the disease as the blisters keep moving throughout the body.
Marcus' condition is genetic. It is inherited, and it is called epidermolysis bullosa dystrophica. Yeah, that means his skin is fragile to minor trauma, and they are born that way. So a child will present with blisters at birth, depending on how they are born. If they are born by normal delivery, they'll have blisters on the head. Then when they start breastfeeding, they'll get blisters around the mouth.
How is it cheza na yeye? Si anakaa kwa bedi yako tu anacheza na wewe. Na hapa kuna friend yako.
As a parent, Manjiku's biggest heartache is not being able to shop for clothes for her son or take him to school. He simply cannot go outdoors or under the sun.
Nimetamani sana neza tamani hata ile venye mtu anashikanga mtoto wake mnatembea naye. Neza tamani sana hata niseme kuja hapa hosivo. Sijei ati mbeba tunaenda. Mtu tunatafutanga mtu anatutoa home, anatupeleka kwenye tunaenda hosi hiyo kumbeba bado inachangia. Venye niliambiwa ati ni jinsi zake ataguro hivyo. Nimechanganyikiwa zinashindwa. Maisha ni ngumu kuishi bila nguo. Mimi hata sijui kama nika understand.
They should be out in the sun because the sun is important for their skin. What we told them is whenever they are out, they have to be protected. Protective gear. If it is the scalp, they wear a helmet. If it's on the elbows and the knees, they wear protective clothing. If they are the socks, they have to put on thick socks with shoes every time.
Wanjiku is not able to work because she has to constantly keep a close eye on Marcus. Her husband abandoned them because he feared the hospital bills will be too huge to cater for.
Naishi na wazazi wangu. Isipokuwa ndo wazazi wangu hata sijui. Hata kwenye nilikuwa nimeuleka ili kama hapo nikabidi nitoke mwenye alikuwa amenioa alikuwa anaambia mtoto atakufanya ufilisike mpaka uishe kabisa, so mpaka tukapata.
Palliative care nurses have had to give her psychological counsel so that she would not despair. Because the disease is not treatable, Marcus is not on active treatment. He is only given painkillers and ointment to manage the pain and irritation. Because of losing blood from the wounds frequently, Marcus is at the risk of becoming anemic.
It is not life-threatening until they get a complication like very severe anemia, unless they get kidney failure or they get overwhelming infection. That is when it becomes life-threatening.
Palliative care in the country first came into being in the early 90s when the Nairobi Hospice was established. After seeing patients who are no longer in active treatment suffering because they were dying of deadly diseases, 2 British nurses and a local doctor in Nairobi opted to ease the pain of such patients. The role of the hospice was to allow patients receive alternative medical care, which they would otherwise not receive while on active treatment in hospital.
To start a hospice is not very easy because hospices are they self-fund. They kind of are not part of the government system. They have to look for their own funding. They have to look for money to buy medicines, for money to build a place up, to set up a unit, to set up a hospice. They have to look for money to pay staff and all those things. So what we thought would be a good idea is to have these services put into existing services in the country.
37-year-old Claire Akinyi, who lives in Kayole, has been visiting the Nairobi Hospice since 2019 after learning about the institution from a friend. She has been ailing since 2015.
Kidney failure ilianza mwaka wa 2015 wakati nilikuwa na mimba na sikuwa najua niko na mimba. Kwa maindi yangu nilikuwa sitaki mimba ingine. Sasa ikawa nimekaa kwa miezi 5 bado najiambia sina mimba. Ikawa nikiwa naenda kazi nikaanza kupata shida ya macho. Nikarudi tena kwa huyo daktari mwenyewe, nikamuuliza mimba inahusika aje na macho. Akaniambia hiyo hana habari, lakini alinituma kwa daktari mwingine. Akaniandikia test niende nipimwe ndio wajue shida iko wapi. Kutokea hapo mimi sikuwa na anything, sikuwa na kitu chochote, sikuwa na pesa. Nikarudi nyumbani, hiyo usiku sikulala. Tumbo ilianza kuniuma hivyo pole pole, naona damu ikitoka pole pole. Sikufikiria kwenda hospitali. Kufika saa 8 usiku nikaona sasa mambo yakaharibika. Damu inatoka mingi, na ndio hiyo mtoto alitoka na hiyo usiku akiwa amekufa.
Her health deteriorated, and when further tests were done, Akinyi was informed that she was suffering from chronic renal failure. In other words, her kidneys had lost the ability to function.
Sikuwa najua kidney failure ni nini bado. High blood pressure pia sikuwa najua. Ukiwa na blood pressure inaweza kuwa hivi, unaweza pata stroke. Hiyo sikuwa najua. So ikaenda hivyo, bado sijaomba ruhusa, mdozi wangu bado hajui kila kitu. Sister yangu alitoka kwake, akakuja kazini, akakaa. Hiyo siku ndio nikaambia daktari, alinilazimisha kwanza niambie daktari anipatie ruhusa niende nione daktari wa figo.
Her best chances of surviving were to get a kidney transplant from a donor, but the one person she completely had faith in abandoned her at the very last minute.
Nilifaulu kupata donor in 2017. Ilikuwa dadangu mdogo. Tukaenda tukafanya test karibu zote. Karibu nimalize, dadangu alibadilika tu. Kuna test tulienda tukafanya na ilikuwa inaitwa angiogram. So kuna machine alikuwa anaingizwa ndiye afanyiwe. Alikataa kuingia kwa hiyo machine. Na hapo sasa nikaona anabadilika, na alikataa kuanzia hiyo siku.
Twice a week for the past 2 years, Akinyi has had to go to a private hospital for dialysis. One session of dialysis costs 7,500 shillings. 2 sessions in a week means 15,000 shillings. She has been doing this for more than 18 months now. No kidney donor has come forward. This dialysis equipment cleans her blood, removing excess waste and liquid as her kidneys can no longer carry out that function. For a total of 4 hours, her blood is pumped out and cleaned and returned back to her body until all the impurities are removed. After this, she will visit Nairobi Hospice again to get medication for free. Without a job, Akinyi cannot afford her medication.
Mwanzo hata vile daktari aliniambia hii kitu si kitu inaisha, nilikuwa nakataa kwenda dialysis. Najiambia nimepona. Kufika hiyo naenda Wednesday. Hiyo Wednesday naruka. Ikifika Friday sijiwezi. Saturday naruka. So kutoka hapo nilijikubali na nikajua maisha lazima iendelee.
Living with such a chronic illness, Akinyi admits the hospice has been her only hope. Recently, she suffered arthritis. She's also suffering from high blood pressure. Death is inevitable, she tells me, but she's not giving up just yet.
Wagonjwa wenzangu unaenda nao, unapata mtu ameaga dunia kwa sababu ya hii ugonjwa. Unaona, lakini unajua hiyo ugonjwa ndio uko nayo. Lakini bado naonanga nasema sitarudi nyuma, sitakufa moyo bado hata kama ni hivyo. Kukufa ni kitu iko. Na si lazima ukufe juu uko na kidney failure. Si unaweza toka hata hapo barabara na ugongwe na gari na ukufe huko na kidney failure.
Elsie Gaitugi is a nurse at the Nairobi Hospice. Her work is to improve the quality of life of patients like Akinyi and others suffering from lifelong diseases that are deadly. Inside this shanty lives 28-year-old Caroline Modhoni. She is a mother of 2. Her eldest son is only 9. Breast cancer came knocking in 2019.
Nilianza kusikia tu kauvimbe, nikaenda hospitali Kiambu.
After delivering her youngest baby that year, she noticed that her right breast was not discharging milk even when her baby breastfed.
Nilipata mtoto, ikakataa kutoa maziwa, ndio nilirudi tena wakaniambia kwanza ni mastitis. Wakakata kuosha mastitis hiyo, wakapata sio mastitis, kuna kitu kingine. Ndio wakanitolea hizo samples niende zipimwe.
Ulipimwa hospitali gani na wakakwambia?
Kenyatta.
So wakakwambia ni breast cancer, ndio walikwambia imefika stage gani?
Ya kwanza ilikuwa imefika stage 2. Lakini sasa kwa ukosefu wa pesa kwenda kemo juu, nilienda kemo moja, nikirudi ya pili nikapata imefika stage 4.
The disease had become deadly as it had moved from her breast to other organs.
Waliniambia imefika mpaka mapafu. Sasa hakuna kitu naweza jifanyia hata kidogo. Hata kuamka hapa ni kuamshwa tu.
Since tumjue akona kidonda kubwa hapa kwa breast yake. So wakati tunamtembelea, kitu ya kwanza, the very basic thing is food. Nobody can live without food. So ile wakati tuko na chakula tutamletea kuhakikisha ya kwamba hatakosa chakula. Kitu kingine ya maana ni dawa. Kansa iko na uchungu mingi sana. So tunampea dawa kuhakikisha anaendelea na maisha yake ile kawaida kulingana na kiwango yenye anaweza fikia. Alafu kitu kingine kuongea. Nobody knows how to live alone. So there is a lot of psychological pain along cancer. So what we do, we come, listen, have a moment with her so that she relieves most of the burden. Psychological pain goes down a bit.
Cases of misdiagnosis or late diagnosis are not new in this country. Many patients have seen their lives cut short because of this. So just why is it becoming common for medical practitioners to fail in diagnosis?
Nauliza Mungu sana, kwa nini mimi? Kwa nini ugonjwa imekaa hivi?
Ni ukweli wa ugonjwa wengi watauliza niko na muda gani wa kuishi. Lakini kifo na kuishi hizo ziko juu ya sisi kuelewa. Hakuna mtu anaweza ambia mtu kweli kesho wewe unakufa. Ile kitu tunafanya ni hata wakati tunapea mtu matumaini, you give realistic hope. Don't give unrealistic hope because it's similar to lying to a patient. One thing that remains even in palliative is honesty. We tell the truth. That doesn't mean breaking someone's hope. You just keep their hope alive, but realistic.
It's a harsh reality that the communication aspect of medical care is deficient in many cases. I would probably blame it on, number one, on the training of healthcare workers. Well, if it was reference to my own training as a doctor, probably not much was paid around communication, like breaking bad news or breaking difficult news to patients. To an extent, I think those are things that you probably learn along the way. So I think there's that, foundationally there's that challenge that, training institutions probably dwell too much on the science and the medical bits of it and forget about communication, and because sometimes communication is done, but done the wrong way.
Another challenge is the ability to return biopsy results in good time. Many a times, public hospitals like KNH are jam-packed with samples from thousands of patients from all over this country, making it hard to conduct tests in laboratories urgently and efficiently.
Before you engage a patient up to a point when you are informing them the diagnosis, it will probably take a bit of your time, and sometimes I think the pressure is on. That is time that I would have seen the next patient. So there's all that. But I think also the other thing, which I probably would also speak from a doctor, sometimes we also need to change our attitude. We need to accept that other than just managing patients, there's also the humane bit of it that we have the responsibility.
Caroline is now bedridden, completely unable to fend for herself. She only has a neighbor who attends to her daily needs. Elsie has been conducting home visits every 2 weeks, sometimes without transport. She has left all else in order to give Caroline attention.
Every patient wants to know their diagnosis. One, it might be because they want to prepare their life. They want to plan themselves on what to do and when. And again, to know if the money they're using for treatment is really helping them. And the treatment itself, is it needed or not? And they'll come to you because they want you to tell them the truth. But the truth is, nobody wants to be told they are dying tomorrow or the day after. The only thing they want is to know they won't be alone, even as they face the death itself.
Our healthcare workers have not fully understood that palliative care should start from the beginning. It's not only not that, but some of them even know that it should start from the beginning, but they still hang on to their patients. They hang on to their patients for many reasons. Maybe they don't want to give up because we have been told our job is to cure.